whether your commissions have met the requirements. So you can always check with your local town. All right, I think I'm gonna close my chat. All right. Thanks everyone. I would say, it looks like just about everybody is muted. If you're welcome to turn your video on. We love that. We love to see it. I'm sure Renata appreciates not speaking to a ton of black boxes. So that's great if you're able to. Otherwise, if you're not speaking, probably makes sense to just go ahead and mute your mics. We are recording this and we'll aim to post this. In case if others that of or on your commissions want to share this. And then, I just thank everyone for coming. My name is Caitlin Palmer. I'm the Director of Planning and Development at the Capital Region Council of Governments. CROG especially wanted to make sure that we were sponsoring some of the required land use trainings for all of the commissioners in our region, but also we determined that it would be a really nice option to make this a virtual evening, and I know there's been a lot going on throughout the rest of the state as well, so aiming to provide yet another opportunity for folks to join us at a time that's convenient for them, and so I'm so glad to see as many of you here tonight. I'm gonna admit we got a couple more. So what we're doing is we're sort of tacking this on to our official Regional Planning Commission meeting that we hold quarterly. And what we're doing is we're just going to do the training with Renata, who I will formally introduce in just a moment. And then we'll be taking care of our official business after we host this training. At which point folks are welcome to stay, but I anticipate probably most of you will be heading out because it'll be around 8:30 at that point. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Renata from UConn Clear to introduce herself and kick us off on our training. And there's a few questions already popping up in the chat. So Renata, I'll flag them for you as well and make sure we don't miss anything.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Caitlin. So good evening, everybody, and thank you so much for attending. We are, first of all, excited to see such an awesome and great turnout tonight. And I want to address probably like two groups that we have in the room tonight. So for those of you who have not been at the training number 1 that was also sponsored by and hosted graciously by CROG, the first segment of our basic training, which covered legal requirements and procedures. And for those of you that do not know me, my name is Renata Bertati. I'm the UConn Extension College of Agriculture, Health and Natural Resources, Center for Land Use Education and Research, short CLEAR, which is still really a total mouthful. And I just started working there this summer. I'm still kind of getting used to saying all this. So in the interest of time, I said this at the first workshop, and I'm going to repeat this again. I don't really want to spend too much time talking about who I am and what do I do at CLEAR so much, short of saying that I am a planner by training and by practice. I have worked as a planner for many years in a number of communities and staffed pretty much all of the land use commissions. So I kind of understand what your tribulations are. Particularly for the newer of you, for those of you that have been recently appointed or elected and are here tonight, this is our website, clear.uconn.edu. At CLEAR, we engage in these 4 program areas. And if you visit our website, you will find all kinds of really helpful resources that can be helpful to land use commissioners. Tonight, we will talk about plan readings and fundamentals of that. And the topics that we will be talking about are difference between plans and maps, scale measuring, distances and topography, reading a site plan, and to be more specific, I'll show you some examples when we look at the Great Neck School from Waterford, Connecticut. Now, for those of you that attended the first training with CROG, this will be structured a little bit differently. we still have a pretty big agenda to go over, but not as big as we did with the first training. And also, this is a type of training that really lends itself a little bit probably better when done in person. So we adapted it the best that I possibly could to a virtual training to accommodate, people that prefer or have to take this virtually. So I expect that there will be questions coming up as I speak. I cannot possibly see all of you and see all the raised hands. So I'm going to ask Jacob to perhaps monitor questions that come in chat and raise hands as I lecture. And as we proceed, Jacob, if you can flag the questions that are relevant to the stuff that, keeps coming up and just bring that over to my attention, I would appreciate it. So it's going to be just structured a little bit differently than we did it last time. There also will not be polling. I will ask you to answer some questions in chat, but we will not do that polling thing, which was not that liked last time around. So those of you that attended last session saw this slide. We talked about, why are we here? But I think that this slide is really important and it bears repeating. The reason why some of you are here is because you need this training. It's mandated. The reason some of you are here is perhaps you are interested in this. I truly hope that many of you are here because of that, because you're interested in this stuff. We at Clear offer this training because we know how important those decisions that you make are and how big of a responsibilities you carry on your shoulders with those decisions that you make. If you attended that training, number one, you perhaps remember the slide with the bunch of alligators by the side of the roads when I say, sometimes you feel like, do I walk in the middle of the road and get hit by a bus? Or do I walk by the edge of the road and get bitten by an alligator? Those are kind of decisions that you're making. But the point is, when you make these decisions, there are certain things that you need to do. You need to be fair. You need to know what you're doing on the commission, which includes understanding these technical documents and information that's being presented to you, including how to read and understand these plans and comprehend maps that are presented to you, which is what you're going to be talking about tonight. And, that way you avoid making the decisions that are mistakes like this. This mistake is a map mistake. This is done because somebody either wasn't paying a close attention or did not know how to properly understand the site plan when they looked at it. And so is this, and so is this. These are obviously a design issues that are that occurred because of the plan review that went wrong. Similarly, this is an issue with somebody not understanding grading. When you look at the map and you see a bunch of lines that show grading and you don't understand quite what does that mean, you end up approving a site plan that's like this. And you make perhaps a mistake like this or like this. So to start off, what's the difference between plans and maps? Maps show the physical differences or physical features of the natural or built environment at established scale and orientation. Plans, on another hand, are engineered drawings that are made to scale and show existing physical features of a site and proposed changes to accommodate development. There are all sorts of different levels of maps, and you saw a bunch of those. Many of you saw parcel maps that look like this. Zoning map is a good example of a town-wide map. If you hike, you saw a USGS quad map. State maps and country and continent maps are recognizable. You know what those are. If you work, if you, for example, are on a ZBA, you may have seen this kind of a map submitted with your application. ZBA applications tend to be sometimes a lower threshold map applications when somebody comes in and says, but I just want something small. And in those instances, the cost of what's proposed does not justify, for example, hiring a surveyor. So sometimes some towns allow ZBAs to approve certain proposals that are done on the town aerial photos. That can happen unless you're dealing with a variance that is up to a foot, up to 3 feet. It all depends on your local policies. This would be example of that kind of map. And then, you saw your wetlands map, your flood maps, all those things provide some sort of information. Whether it's a map or a plan, it's really all that comes down is about the information. And just like anything else, when you're considering information, you have to be careful that you're looking at an accurate information. So I'm taking an example from New London and Waterford, and you can see this comparison between an aerial photo and the map, where you can see a couple of developments, a development here that's on an aerial, which is shown on the map here, and the subdivision that's shown on the map here. This subdivision, however, is not on the map. And the reason for that is that at the time this map was produced, the subdivision hasn't been built. So the point I'm making is maps are two-dimensional representations of these complex landscapes at a specific point in time. So again, we go to the accuracy of the information that's being presented to you. Bruce Hyde, my predecessor in this position, used to show this map, which shows these most recognizable brands around the United States. And we, as a state, were recognized by General Electric, which long since has actually left the state, and we're no longer recognized by that brand. So this shows you a map that's no longer accurate. This other map is fun to look at. It may or may not be accurate. I have no way of knowing because I don't have any data that shows me when this was produced or who produced it. So while this is kind of fun to look at and consider, whether or not a coach or a plastic surgeon is like a leading highest paid employee in my state, I can't tell whether or not this is just accurate at all. So when you get plans to look at, and on the commission, you normally will not actually get these big bundles, but your staff will get these big bundles of plans that can be, 2 or 3 sheets or up to 50 sheets of plans. And they're bundled compilations of drawings that actually tell a story about a development. And those bundles normally include number of different things, including a cover sheet, existing conditions plan, a demolition plan, if there is existing building on that site, utilities, site plans, drainage and landscaping plan, erosion and control plan, building elevation and floor plans, like all those kind of things. So you get normally this big compilation, almost like a book of maps. And then each one of those plans in itself has actually a lot of information that you can learn on each sheet from. So this example that I'm showing on the screen right now shows you, for example, a project data, open space, water feature, on-site loading, parking. So as I said, first you get this like big bundle of plan sheets, and then each sheet has tons of information on it. The point of this training is you're not going to learn tonight how to completely read the site plan if you have never had been exposed to that. And just out of curiosity, actually, can you in a chat just tell me, in your life, in your profession, in your previous life, if you are retired, what have you done work that had anything to do with like daily site plan reading or daily interaction with site plans? I'm just curious to see that. And I'm going to open chat and just kind of see this. So I'm seeing a bunch of no's, couple of yeses. Yeah. So there are some yeses. Thank you. Thank you for replying. There are some yeses, but for the most part, it's a bunch of no's. And that's really a representation of your normal community. That's representation of, you know, what you have in your towns as well. So you will not walk away from this training if you have not been interacting with this too much, knowing exactly how to read the plan. But the idea is to familiarize you so that as a commissioner, you have understanding as to where to look for information, how to look for information, because information is there. And it's really not as complex as it may look at first glance if you're not familiar with it. So then on these plan sheets, on each one of these plan sheets, you know, they have a lot of information, and that information includes things such as a location map, you know, index of drawings. You will normally have an orientation like a north arrow, a title block, legend, scale, zoning table, things like that. And I'm going to show you what those things look like so that you can kind of easily recognize that when you see that. So this is what location map looks like. Location map shows a location of that site. And I don't know why I went off camera, completely out of blue. Okay.
Yeah, we can definitely still hear you, which is good, but yeah, your video just cut out.
You know what? I'll just keep on talking until I come,
Maybe it'll fix
until my
itself.
video comes back, because I mean, I'm obviously here. And it's important that you hear me more than that you see me anyways, I think. But location map is exactly that. It's a map that shows a location of a site in relationship to the rest of the community. So what you will normally see is a site and then a couple of roads that are around it that, you know, people are familiar with. And this map tends to be either on the first page of the like first page in that bundle of documents, or on the survey page in the bundle of documents. So when you get like this big bundle, you will see it somewhere at the beginning of your packet. The next thing that you will normally see is the index of drawings. And the index of drawings tells you where to look for what kind of a plan sheet. And this is like same thing as a book index. It is, you know, something that lists up things like which plan is on in which location in that bundle. They're organized by content, so you will have like landscape plans and site civil plans and architectural plans. And then if you're looking specifically, for example, for a planting plan, you would look under the landscaping plan, and site planting plan would be there. Your orientation, north arrow, can look any which way of these. North arrow should be on each of the sheet of paper of the site on the plans. They can look different on each plan, and that is because when you get this compilation of maps, some are prepared, for example, these landscape plans are prepared by the landscaping architect. The site plans are prepared by a different, perhaps, engineering group, and architectural maps may be prepared by different architectural group company, and they all may have different templates they use that they use to prepare their maps. So they may use different kind of north arrow symbols. In addition to that, it's important to see which way these north arrows are oriented, because that orientation directs you as to which way things on your site plan are oriented. If you remember, just a minute ago, I showed you that aerial and the map, and I showed you this development here, which corresponds with the development in the map in the red, and the subdivision in the blue that correspond with the subdivision in the blue. And you see that they're not oriented the same. And that is because the map, the north arrow points upwards, and the north arrow on the aerial points to the left. This is your legend. Legend is really the who, the what, the when, like all that stuff, like who prepared that, where are you, what's the address, what is the scale, whether the plan was revised or not, some information about plan divisions, if you're lucky, that sort of thing. Legend is really important. Maps are all about symbols. They're essentially a book that's written in a symbology, and the legend translates that symbology into something that's comprehensible and that you can translate into a meaningful information for you. So you need to know what symbols on the map represent. In this example, we are showing to you existing spot elevation, the proposed spot elevation, upland review zone, this is for wetlands, and limits of vegetation. This is super helpful, and we want to see this. This is your quick way to figure out whether something complies or not complies. So this is a zoning compliance table, and it essentially shows, and this is a zoning compliance table for a subdivision. It's a 3-lot subdivision. So you can see what's required. You can see by your zoning regulation what's required, and then you can see what's proposed by the 3 lots that are proposed for the subdivision. So you see that you're required, for example, lot width for these lots is 125 feet. An example that I chose to outline for you is for lot 6 is 127 feet. You can quickly determine that that meets your zoning compliance. Therefore, it doesn't need the variance, and you can move on with your life and live happily ever after. The other helpful thing is that plans generally include a bunch of notes. So there is a lot of literature in between these symbols too to read. That literature tells you, for example, things like this, that, in this example, wetlands were delineated by a specific person who is a soil scientist, and he did a field delineation. So that tells you that this map is likely more accurate than your town wetlands map. And then, there is this other reference note that talks about flood. Now, scale. Again, this is really This works really, really good when we do an in-person class. So when we do, because we will be teaching, we teach these classes annually. When we teach these classes in person, I truly encourage you, if you can make an in-person class next year, please attend it, because this is really helpful. But scaling, particularly because we give people scale and maps and then ask them to like scale certain things up, that exercise is helpful. So scale shows relative size of objects, and it can come in either as a written scale or a graphic scale. If you use a written scale, be careful of distortions. Any like zooming in, zooming out, or printing can distort scale. So we prefer actually the graphic scales. They're more reliable. The scaling works. Each one of those plan sheets that I talk about is drawn at a certain scale. And you would look on that legend to find out which scale that plan is drawn at. So you would determine that, for example, if your plan is drawn at a 40 scale, then you would get this scale that is sort of triangular measuring device, like the one that I'm showing on my slide. And you would find the 40 on that. And you see that on the opposite side of that, there is this 20 thing. So there is also like 60 and 50, and there is all kinds of different measurements, but you would match what's on your map. That means that you use that and you watch for your bars. Each bar you multiply by 10 to get how many feet. So a divider 4 means you're 40 feet away. Divider 24 means you're 240 feet away, and divided 400, divider 40 means 400 feet away. Be mindful of this note, NTS. That means not to scale, and I'll show you why is that important in like 2 seconds. 2 seconds. So if we were to measure the distance between two buildings, and this here, 2324 is a duplex, this here is another building, 27 is another building. If we were to measure a distance between this duplex and this building, 27, we would first find out what scale was that map drawn at. So we have that at 1 to 40 scale. Then we would turn our scale to the measuring scale of 40. Then we would align 0 to one side of the building, position it so that we see where the divider, where the bar is on the scale, where it meets the other building. And in this instance, that's 5.5, and that tells us that this distance is 55 feet. Now, I just mentioned that NTS acronym, which means not to scale. And I mentioned that because sometimes it would be helpful to have that written on some of the drawings that we see and that you see. And for those of you that are new, that you will be seeing. This is an example of when somebody submitted a plan to a planning department to expand existing building. And they indicated that the building is 45 feet away from the street and that the building is only 24 feet wide, but they obviously do not have like a very good sense of scale at all. Topography is measured by contours, and contours are an imaginary lines that connect points of equal elevation. On this example here, you see the tops of the hills that are shown as these 2 green dots, and then you see a contours that are these dashed lines, and one of them is indicated as a contour 200. Now, this is a 3D presentation. On the map, what you see is actually these 2-dimensional representation below that is shown like this, with the 2 hills as two green dots, and this contour 200 that looks like this. Sometimes we use cross sections to represent three-dimensional objects in two dimensions. And cross sections are essentially done in a way where we draw a line through the tops of the hills, and then we connect those lines wherever the vertical line, wherever they cross section intersects the contours in order to get this image that is two-dimensional representation of these two hills that we have. We also sometimes exaggerate the vertical scale in order to communicate meaningful information. And this is an example of why we would sometimes do that. So if you look here, we have a distance that's measured in miles, and we have an elevation that's measured in feet. This is Nyantic Bay Triathlon bike route. If you are a biker and you're going on this route, you would see that between mile 2 and mile 4, you have a pretty smooth ride. Between mile 4 and mile 5, you're gonna struggle, you're gonna sweat. So if we were to use distance in miles on elevation as well as on distance, it would look like this. You would not understand anything, right? You would have no information at all. That is why sometimes we have to exaggerate this information to convey meaningful information to you through mapping. The slope direction is calculated perpendicular to the contour lines, and water always flows downhill in the direction of slope because that is the steepest part of the hill. And if you hike, you must have seen these kind of maps. Now, this is a USGS quad map. It shows a whole lot of information, and I will just show a couple of things real quick. So a contour interval is a vertical distance between contours, 10 feet on top of map. It normally is between 2 or 5 feet on the sightline. Every fifth contour, so every 50 vertical feet, is an index contour, and those are bolded. Contours that are far apart show gentle slopes. Contours that are together are steep slopes. Contours that are very close are a cliff. And the ones that have these like circles, especially if they have another circle on top of them, those are hilltops. Contours that are sort of in a U way, in a U, and point downstream, those are a ridge. And the ones that are V and point upstream, those are where you have a stream. Spot elevation is a point of known elevation, and that's used as a point of reference for survey. And benchmark is a point of known position and known elevation, and it's also used as a survey. Now, I am going to give you a minute and see if you paid attention to anything that I was saying in this black box that has been me. And I'm going to work on fixing my camera and seeing why am I like 1 minute on and 1 minute off. And I'm going to ask you to match images on left side of your screen to images on right side of your screen and put that into chat. So I'm going to give you about like 2 minutes to do this. 2 minutes. Or actually, I'm going to give you about like few minutes until I fix my camera. How about that? Okay, maybe we will do this different background and maybe this will do the trick. Now let's see, what do you say in chat? Okay. Okay. All right, so pay attention to what you answered, and I'm going to show you the answer, and then just let me know with the thumbs up if you got it right. So 1 is B, 2 is E, 3 is D, 4 is C, 5 is F, 6 is A. So how did you do? Did you do okay? Yeah? Yeah? Okay, so I see a lot of thumbs up. Very good. Oh, this makes me so happy. So you were paying attention. Very good. All right, thank you so much. So, like I said, slope direction is calculated perpendicular to contours line, and despite I literally have seen plans when developers, engineers have drawn stormwater detention ponds on top of development. You know, I've seen all kinds of things when people defy the fact that water flows down slope. But we all know that water will always flow downhill. And the question is, how do you measure that direction of, you know, where is the direction of the slope? So and what's the percent of slope? Like, how do you calculate that distance? So the slope is calculated by the distance in elevation, by the difference of the elevation over the distance. In this example, you have a 10 feet elevation over 20 feet distance, which multiplied by 100, because you're calculating slope as a percentage, gives you a 50% slope. Okay, great. Super information. But what does that mean? In real life, as a commissioner, you may have heard, you know, this particular driveway is proposed as 12% grade, but our town engineer thinks that's too steep. Or the subdivision road is proposed at 8% grade, but the maximum allowed slope is 10%. Or, you know, we're doing the construction and the proposed slope during the construction will be 3:1, and we're using these kind of erosion controls measures. And what does all that mean? Like, you know, how do you really understand what does that mean? So this example with the skier is from the Tuckerman's Ravine on Mount Washington. This is super steep. This is almost 40% slope. The 15% slope is about equivalent of having 12 steps. So if you have a driveway that's 15% slope, that's an equivalent of having 12 steps from your door to the bottom of 12 steps. So that's really steep. So that gives you about some sense of, you know, how steep is steep. And that's understanding those kind of things is important because, you know, when you have, obviously, you know that when land is flat, it doesn't drain, you may have flooding issues. When you have steepness, you have erosion control issues, soil stability issues, safety issues. So now that we kind of understand these, like what do these things sort of look like and how to measure them, let's look at an example of a site plan that you may actually be required to take a look at as a part of your commission viewing. So on this page, what you can see that this is a corner lot. It's a lot on two streets. There is a main street, there is a country road. It's a vacant lot. There are no buildings on it. From the project name here, you can see that this is a pharmacy. You can see here that there is a location map and all kinds of other maps. My point is that once you see something like this, your first act is to start asking questions like what do I even see here, right? So you take it apart and you start asking questions. Where is it? So you look at the location map. What's the project name? We just said, and that project name tells you this is a pharmacy. This is kind of part of information that's going to become relevant in a minute. Where is the north arrow? What's the scale? When was this drawn? And where was a drone is important because of that first point that I made, how accurate is this information? If this site plan was drawn in like 1999, forget it. This probably is not even accurate. What kind of a plan is this? Who prepared the plan? Are they qualified? And then you look at this legend and is this even, what does this mean? So to start with figuring out what we kind of learned so far, then we ask questions. Where are the steepest and where are the flattest areas on this site? So we just kind of talked about this. Steep is here because we see these lines that are all close together. More level is here because we just learned, where we have contours that are far apart, that's where the ground is level. Where are high and low points? When I was showing you that cross example, I showed you two hills. This is not two hills. This is actually a hill and a depression on this example. So you have a high point of 616 and a low point of 602. Now, you also now know that this is a pharmacy with a parking lot. So if you have a high point and low point as a commissioner, you already know that a developer will want to have a flat site. So that tells you right away that they will want to level this up, that there will be some grading going on and some stuff like that. You look at contours and you ask yourself, where does the site drain? Where does the road drain? Because water drain perpendicular to the contours, you know that from the center of the road, this water will drain like this. And that's, going to end up in the catch basins. This is a traffic circulation plan. It generally comes up with a bunch of these arrows like this that shows circulation around the site. So this site you can access from here and go all around and exit on this other side, or this way, exit this way. On this intersection, you have all kinds of ins and outs. This is a full access intersection, so you can go pretty much every which way. If I were a planner in your community, I would really hope that as a commissioner, you would pick up on this section here, where this green box is, because, just a minute ago, we realized when we looked at this plan, we said this is a pharmacy, right? So pharmacies, this thing here, pharmacy will have a drive-through. And this shows you that this pharmacy has a proposed drive-through. This green box is your queue line for a drive-through pharmacy. So you have vehicles exiting, backing, in the parking here, you have a queue line and you have a parking, you have a vehicular circulation that goes this way. So in this here section, there is all kinds of activity that's happening. And as a commissioner, I would hope that this is one of those things that you pick up on and ask a lot of questions during your site plan review of a developer. Then you ask, those zoning compliance questions. What's the lot size? Your regulations require 1 acre. This lot is 1.3 acres. Is there enough frontage? You pull out your handy dandy scale and measure it. This is a double frontage lot, and we know that because in that first map, we saw that it's a corner lot. It sits on those two streets. And then if you are measuring frontage, you measure on the shortest frontage. So you take your scale, you figure out which map scale is map drawn at, so it's 40, and then you measure like we show, 40 to 0, and then figure out in this instance, this is 122 feet. You have a double frontage, your other frontage is longer than the shorter one, so you don't have to bother measuring that, so you're good to go. You measure your building setbacks. Your regulations may require 40 feet, but you need to remember that you are double frontage because you are double frontage lot because you're on a corner. How many parking spaces? You count those. Your regulations require 41 plus 2 handicap, but you have 34.2. So now here, your developer or your applicant has an issue, right? So it doesn't meet. They can seek a variance. They can reduce the size of the building to require less parking spaces, or they can propose a regulation amendment, but they cannot proceed with the plan as is. And they have a similar problem with the distance from the intersection. You require 75 feet. They have only 62 feet. They need to resolve this problem somehow. You're looking at the grading plan. There are these lines that, and as a commissioner, I think, especially because you will normally get like reduced plans. On a commission, you don't normally get full-size site plans. You either get like a smaller copies of a plans, or you get an electronic emailed like version of plans. Grading plans are particularly tough to read because the grading legends tend to be like this. Your property lines and existing contours are similar, and it's just all bunch of similar lines. In the example that I'm showing, everything that's proposed is in the full darker lines, and everything that's existing is in the hash marked like lighter kind of lines. So you can see, like we just said, they will want that flat site for this pharmacy. They have to do cut and fill. They have to cut that hill and they have to fill that depression to bring the site to 608, 610 elevation approximately. You need to know when they're doing stuff like that, even when the site is balanced, meaning even when they're not taking dirt off of site or bringing dirt to the site, and they're just operating with a lot of excavation within one site, you want to know that because there will be a lot of truck inside with a lot of back alarms beeping and a lot of noise and a lot of stuff. And that tends to be very disturbing to neighbors. However, when you have a lot of export and import of fill to and from site that goes through residential neighborhoods, that's very disruptive to the neighborhood. And that generally creates a lot of emotional protesting at your meetings. So you need to know that ahead of time. You can address that at the time of application through addressing time of operation. Like you can set hours of operation. You can address that through the noise limitations. You can address that through dust regulations. Erosion control is very important in those instances. There are mitigation measures that you can definitely implement if you are aware of it early on. And then every site, wherever you have a building, will have normal like utility kind of provisions, water, sewer, gas, sanitary sewer, that sort of thing. I will show you the landscaping plan, how to read that. So the plant locator is this box with a little like line that goes through it. And on top of that box, you have a number of plants, and on the bottom, you have a type of plants. So you normally on the landscaping plan have like a list of plants, and this is a legend for the entire plan. So this is for the entire site plan, all the plants that are planted for the entire site. So for this site, for example, we will have 107 dwarf Japanese garden Jupiters that are planted at 18 to 24 inch spread, 4 feet on center. Now on the site plan, the way that looks is you have these 4 pluses that are located in this landscaping island, and you have this box that shows 4 PS, which stands for Kwanzaa flowering cherry, and Kwanzaa flowering cherry is on this. You can see it. That's actually cut out of this main legend. So it's here. So out of total of 24, 4 will be planted here. And then this is another example where you will have this 1 flowering pair out of 9 that's going to be planted here where this plus sign is. Landscaping plans also come in with a bunch of notes, some notes that say things like, don't plant or review for planting so that you don't plant over like underground utilities and things like that. Pay attention to landscaping notes, because sometimes landscaping architects include things like this just to check whether you are paying attention or not. This is a poison ivy that was proposed as a ground cover just to check if somebody was like paying attention. This is an example of generic stormwater system, a system of catch basin that's connected together, draining into an overland drain. This is a schematic of a catch basin. It has a top of the rim, an outlet, an inlet, an invert. Has to be above or at the same level, or the bottom of the invert has to be at the same level or above of the outlet of the storm catch basin. And the bottom of catch basin is where the dirt ends up from the erosion control and Dunkin' Donuts cups and all kinds of stuff that the town at the expense of taxpayers has to actually end up vacuuming out. So we want to limit using of city infrastructure, town infrastructure as much as possible, and turn it to as many as possible green infrastructure. I'll get to this in 1 second. And this is how those systems work in a schematic sense. It just makes sense. But because we had a summer that we did and the fall that we did, and because we're in times of real municipal struggles in addressing stormwater system, we have failing infrastructure, we have climate change. I wanted to show you really quickly a couple of green infrastructure elements which you should consider when reviewing your applications, and perhaps you may encourage And I'm hoping you will be seeing them more and more often applied in your communities. So this is an example of dry swale, and there are four. They're surrounding this driveway and this parking lot. This is the example of, like, zoom in example of one of those. And when you look at it, it has a berm in the middle, which is about a foot taller than the rest of it. At the end of it, this is the yard drain. So this is what that looks in like real life. So the water sheets flow over the driveway, and then it gets onto this grassy land. It slows down, it percolates slowly into the ground, and the point of that berm is to slow the water even more off. So a couple of things happen here. The water is percolating, and it's that deposit. It's depositing all the sediment and dirt that it picks up, so that all that stuff is not ending up in your storm drainage system, so that you don't have to expense your money in vacuuming out that sediment. You also see this thing on the picture is yard drain, that is raised up a little bit above the actual dry swale, and that is so that the water around it can sit a little bit and percolate before it enters it, if it does even ever need to enter. And then this system is just like your regular catch basin. It's connected to the storm drain, and it acts like a normal storm drainage system. The second thing that I want to show are these systems of flush concrete curves and stone erosion control strips. And that is next to the driveway and next to the parking lot. So these are essentially your curbs that are flat with the driveway, and they allow water that sheet flows off of the driveway to slow down and drop some sediment over those stones and slow down before it enters your dry swale. So that's the point of those things. There is also this thing called taper, 6-foot taper, which is just a transition between a flush curb and the normal curb. That's what that looks like. Turf pavers, many of you saw these. These are the pavers that are used in areas where you have sort of infrequent, but sometimes necessary need to access by vehicles. So they have that here around the sidewalks. They have it by school because they needed some kind of access for deliveries and stuff. These kind of things allow water to percolate. You can still drive over them occasionally without ripping up your lawn and stuff like that. And the last thing that I will talk about is a wet swale. And the wet swale is actually something that works together with this other thing that's called precast concrete flared end, or precast, or rather than that, here, let me show it. So wet swale, as opposite to the dry swale, tends to be wet most of the time. Dry swale is mostly dry. It's wet after the rain. Wet swale tends to be wet most of the time. The adjacent, this thing here, is called riprap armored berm. And the water exits the actual structures where it collects, that it slows down over this riprap armored berm, and then it ends in a wet swale, and it percolates slowly into the ground that way. Now on the map, you can see all kinds of notes as to how, for example, this thing is to be built. And one of the points that I'm making here in regards to the map reading is you can see in this example, these two structures on two different plans. So there is a drainage plan and there is a different kind of plan. I have trouble seeing the name of it, grading plan sheet. So there is a grading plan and drainage plan. The riprap armored berm is shown differently on these two different plans. So when you have a situation like that, when something is shown differently on two different plan sheets and you're not sure which plan to trust, what you need to do is look at these things in circle that are detailed. So these detailed circle indicates you the detailed plan sheets. So then you would go to the, for example, for riprap armored berm, to the map number C-4.7 and look at the detailed drawing number 7 and look at that, and that would describe to you how this riprap armored berm is constructed. So whenever you have a specific like difference between something, then you look for a reference that is to a detailed map and then go with that. There you go. And this is what wet swale would look like. So like I said, the water gets out of this structure here, slows down over the rock, over these rocks, drops the sediment, and then it just percolates slowly here. And lastly, I'll just talk really briefly about erosion control maps. So on the erosion control, you will see things like this. This is a detail for the anti-tracking pad. On our site that I was showing, you will have 2 because you had those like 3, you will have 3 because you have those 3 driveways. This is an example of what installation for silt fence could look like, or installation of hay bales would look like. In a real life, this translates to this is a good silt fence installation that matches good silt fence installation on a map. This is a bad hay bale installation, which does not match what's shown on the map, because they missed this and literally directed all this dirt directly into the catch basin. And those are kind of things that you kind of need to watch out for, right? And then anti-tracking pad, I can't tell. This is a bad photograph, so sorry about that. But it needs to be at least 50 feet long. It needs to be well maintained. It needs to be done a certain way. And there are things that are on the plan that are specifying all those things. And they need to be shown on the plan. And sometimes they're missed. Maybe you have seen more bad plans than I did. And sometimes there are reasons for why we see bad plans. Sometimes it's simple. Sometimes there is just a layer that is like not turned on. And there is a bunch of missing information because somebody forgot to click something. Sometimes it is like this situation here, where a property owner wanted to build an addition, and it was his building, his site, and he wanted to build an addition. And then it was found out that below that addition, there was this asphalt corrugated metal pipe underneath it. So the town raised that to his attention and said, well, you may not want to have that addition there because there is this pipe, and if the pipe bursts, you're going to have a problem with your addition. But he said, it's my pipe, it's my building, I don't care. So sometimes you see a bad plan and it's not much to be done about it. So there are those situations as well. If you attended my session number 1, You may remember that, I said incomplete applications and bad plans are not grounds to not acting on the application, and always treat an application as a live bomb and act on it to avoid automatic approval. So when you get bad plans, make sure that first of all, you understand what your ability, what your authority, which legal authority you have to approve or deny your application are. But do not ever leave it hanging, like act on it one way or the other, always. And that's it. That brings this session to an end. So at this point, I will ask you to ask me questions, and I will bring this up. This is my evaluation. I will ask you to scan this code and provide the training evaluation, which is really important to me because I'm asking you to give me areas of interest for our upcoming training for next year. And I will see what's in the chat and ask Caitlin and Jacob to help me with questions.
Awesome. Great. Thank you. We do have one question, although I might need some clarification. Okay, Victoria got back to me. And we've got one of the general questions is, finding the recording. So we will be posting this online. We do have our first one online, but I'm realizing now it's only the audio. We must have never coordinated to get it posted on our YouTube channel because it's just a sizable file. We can't actually host it on our own website. So we're going to work to get that on our YouTube channel, and I can send it out to everyone that attended tonight. And I will also include the previous training as well. So that was one bit. We did have one question, and it's from, I think, Victoria, who is asking, since we're covering site plans, what type of site plan does CGS or Connecticut General Statute Section 8-3M apply to? All site plans, or those just related to development projects, or would it also include excavation projects?
I do not know.
And that's, I'm trying to confirm.
I would
the
have
section.
to look. I am sorry. Maybe reach to me in an email. I would have to check that statute off the top of my head. I do not know.
Yeah, and I did, I did a quick Google. Maybe I'm not on the best page.
Yeah.
I didn't even see 3M. So Victoria said it was a section that was added in 2021 regarding site plans not expiring for 14 years now.
There was that whole thing when since 2009, they kept on expanding and changing that, adding certain years to the expiration date. But I, without looking at the statute, I would not know offhand. So sorry, Victoria, reach out to me by email. I honestly can't remember, don't know.
All right, she's gonna.
But before we go, actually, I forgot something kind of important. So certificates, I started this by why are we all here? And some of you are here for certificates. And then I just didn't say anything about certificates anymore. So if we can identify you by your attendee name, so Caitlin will be compiling a list and sending it to us. And then my office will be sending a certificates of attendance. We just issue something that says essentially we certify that you attended this training, and we believe that the training carried 1.5 hour. Now, I also have to tell you that we have held so many trainings this since I started, probably 13 or something. I lost count. So we are behind in issuing certificates. It will take some weeks, but you will get them. We will email certificates. And then if you do not get anything from us in about a month, then please reach out to me. My email is out there. But in about a month, you should have them. Okay?
I've got a couple of other questions, and then also I just wanted to add, we're getting a lot of complimentary things in the chat, Renata, so I'll make sure that
because we
get
didn't
this over
have
to you.
We didn't have
we didn't do polling. We kept it simpler. And there's a question regarding a certificate for each of the trainings. If you attended the first one with Clear, at least through us, I don't know how long you've been doing the certificates, but I believe there was a certificate sent at least for the first one that we did sponsor with Clear. I don't know if you're doing other trainings that are not with Renata, that I can't say. It varies. It's not a requirement of the legislation on the land use training, so it does vary, I think, depending on where you're going. And then I have, and some people confirming that they've received their certificate. One of the questions that we did have, and maybe, you know, if you want to add more specificity to this too, we had a question that says, how are plans for 830G developments handled?
As far as reading plans, same as any other plans. So we just went all over how would you read plans, right? So you read A-30G plans the same way as you read any other plans. The applicability of A-30G is a whole other thing as to whether or not the zoning applies in those instances or not. That's a whole other session, a whole other training session. But you read those plans exactly the same as you read these. You know, we went over some site plan requirements. If zoning does not apply, and if your setbacks do not apply, then forget about learning how to measure the distance for setbacks. So that's I think the crux of it, right? So if A-30G rule says zoning is out of, doesn't matter, zoning doesn't matter, and your setbacks do not matter, then the fact that I just taught you how to scale and measure your frontage, you know, and setback, side yard setback, be happy you know how to measure.
I don't know if there's any, this might be a question, potentially for you, Renata, although others might be able to weigh in on this. Comment/question, maybe. Electronic versions of plans and maps are too often at a low resolution. Therefore, the documents are unreadable when making them larger, especially the notations. There should only be high resolution documents submitted for our review, but each town needs to insist on it. Do you agree?
I do.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
I do. I think as a commissioner, you should have information that enables you to make a decision.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to have information that allows you to make a decision.
And I don't know, and folks can either put questions in the chat or feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question as well. And one thing I would just say to the folks that are left, we still have over 100 of you. Thank you so much. I am just out of curiosity before you go, if you want to throw the town that you are a commissioner for, I'm just really curious to kind of see where everyone came from this evening, because I have a feeling we have some folks from beyond our region, which is awesome. I love that so much. So we will follow up, like I said, with everyone that's registered as well. Oh, I think I saw a question sneak in. Yes. Question is regulations. Oh, maybe this is a comment. Regulations can stipulate the resolution and or size of the plans required. Yes. Mm-hmm.
That is true.
Yeah, and scale everything. Mm-hmm. So I appreciate this. And this is just a reminder. And then, oh, Mike has posted something in there as well regarding CAHC, which I can't think of the acronym right now, held a conference this week and all sessions are online. Mike, if you're able to throw the link in the chat for folks as well. And then for those of you that caught it, I can also send this in a follow-up email as well. There's a training coming up as part of the 4 hours that you're required to do right now. One of them is, I believe it's just one, required for affordable housing. CROG was unable to work with somebody to sort of sponsor a training for that on our behalf. But Desegregate CT is offering something that they said will qualify. So there's a link sent earlier, but it's long buried by now. So we can throw that in the chat again. And again, I can follow up as well. That's good. I think that's scheduled for the 29th. So it's the week after Thanksgiving on a Thursday, I believe.
And I think this is kind of unofficial yet, but please watch out my calendar at Clear. If you can drop in a link, can I drop in a link to my calendar? So if you keep tabs on the Clear's calendar, I think on December 11th, there will be a training offered by CCAPA. This is unofficial. It's not my training. They host it, so I can't promise this like 100%, but that training should have a legal session, the basic training legal part. So part 1 of this training. So for anybody who missed part 1 of this session, that I will teach, and it will also have housing, affordable and fair housing policy session.
And that's when?
December 11th.
And they're asking, and maybe you
So
said this.
watch out. Let me see if I can just get
And
this.
Curious, if is that class virtual or in person? And
It's
how
going to be virtual. It's going to be virtual.
virtual, and another
Caitlin, I
1.5
have too
hours?
many screens. Do you mind just dropping in? It's my land use academy
Okay, we can get that.
calendar link.
All right. Yes, you're sending that to me, or do I already have that?
I am not sending it because I have like 50 million.
That is okay. We
there, and
can
I'm afraid
follow
to
up too if
mess it.
that's
Um,
link.
Why is there something with desegregate?
They're offering, we weren't able to get a session together for the affordable housing requirement of the training, so we've covered 3 out of the 4 hours required as far as what CROG has sponsored. And I just happened to see that Desegregate CT is offering a topic. I forget what the information is covering, but they said it was going to cover, I think, more than the hours even required for the housing piece. And it's going to be on the 29th.
Well,
And right
that has
now,
nothing to do with, there's no legislation to that effect, and it's not a governmental organization. So why are they getting involved in this?
it doesn't have to be like Clear, or it can be a variety of organizations, as long as your town.
It's a political organization. So why are we getting into the politics of it?
You don't have to take the training. I mean, it's
Why
there
they're
for
offering
people.
something that has a political.
It's there for people
background.
who want information on affordable housing, but at the same
Not
time,
on affordable housing. It's a political organization.
okay.
Like
Yeah.
if the Democratic Party wanted to talk about raising your taxes.
Been a great training so far, I can say, and perhaps this is a conversation that could be taken offline.
I
As
would
someone
agree.
else has said, that you can take the training or you can't. It's up to you. I feel we should focus our efforts on thanking our presenters, Renata, and take this conversation offline if it needs to go there.
I would agree. And there's another link as well put in the chat on the
I just
Partnership
did.
for Strong Communities as well. Mike, Steve, thank you for posting that, with multiple sessions available online as well. So lots of options for folks that want. I've missed a few that I've not been able to share out because they've happened in the past. So I wanted to make sure that I brought that to folks' attention if you want to attend something that's happening live, potentially virtual. And that link is just a form, by the way, for folks that are interested and want more information as it becomes available, because I don't think everything's been posted yet.
And
Right.
just before I say goodnight, my calendar is in the chat as well. The CCAPA training is not posted out on it yet because we're still in conversation with them, but that's in the works. So as soon as I finalize the conversation with CCAPA, we'll post it on the calendar. So please just keep looking at our calendar if you're interested in that training on December 11th.
Quick question on that DC-11 training. Do you know how many hours it would be?
For housing, it will be 1 hour, and for mine, it will be 1.5.
Well, thank
So
you
that-
so much, Renata. If there are any other questions on anything that Renata had this evening, speak now or forever hold your peace, I suppose. But this was incredibly informative. And yeah, I really, really appreciate it. And thank you all for attending. Over 100 folks from across the state. That was amazing. And hopefully we'll continue to work with Renata and others for the upcoming years and the upcoming training requirements that will continue to be required. So looking forward.
Thank you. I truly appreciate it. Thank you all so much. Have a
Thank
good
you,
night.
everyone. And I'll make a statement too, as folks are leaving, you're welcome to stay. We're going to continue our RPC official business. There will be a presentation on the plan of conservation and development updates that CROG is doing. So if you're particularly from the region and you're interested in hanging on, you are more than welcome to do so. But otherwise, I'll let folks filter out for a moment. We still have quite a few. All right. Jacob, when you get a moment, we can go ahead and pull up your presentation. And
Will do. Question about the recording. Should I stop this recording and start a new one, or?
potentially a good idea just so that we can have a clean break for the training piece. So yeah, give us a second while we do that. That's a good idea.
Okay. And will that save appropriately on Zoom as 2 separate recordings? I don't think it does. That's
It
the
might
thing.
just do it as one. Maybe just leave
Yeah.
it.
Okay.
Just leave it running. We can fix it on the back end, I think.
Okay.
I say that having zero tech savviness when it comes to videography, but surely
And
someone.
Jen, are you ready? You all set? Give her a second. When is she in there?
She maybe mentioned she was calling in by audio too because her internet was being really slow.
I see. All right.
So yeah, I see she's still on, but ouch.
Well, I'll start sharing this guy.
Okay.
And there we go. See that okay?
Yes.
All right.
Very good. Yeah, is Kate still on? Deconstruction. Make sure I capture that last question. All right. All right. And Jennifer, are you there? / is your internet working?
Jen. I'll message her directly.
And if Jen is not, do we have our co-chair? Unexpected.
Oh.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Yes, we can.
it's a little echoey, but we can hear you.
We hear some music or something. Will's not here, huh?
Jen, are you the phone number ending in 5646? So I can potentially unmute you. Yeah, let's try that. Maybe I can unmute you. What is is there a shortcut for Zoom for unmuting on your phone? It's like star or something.
Okay, I just
I
sent
think it's
the,
star six, Caitlin.
Star six.
Yeah.
Can you
Jennifer?
hear me now?
yes,
Yes.
we can.
All right. I was trying in the chat box, but there's such a delay with my Wi-Fi, so I apologize.
No, that's okay. And I was trying to unmute you. I can only apparently ask you to unmute.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was trying and it was like, I can't communicate. So good evening, everyone. I'd like to call our November 16, 2023 meeting to order. And before we begin, there is, did you put it underneath other business? Yes. I'd like to move the 2024 meeting dates that's under other business. We wanted to move that to after the report on zoning and subdivision referrals, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So does someone like to make a motion to that effect?
This is Bonnie from Manchester. I move that we make an adjustment in the agenda and move the 2024 meeting dates to the fourth item on the agenda.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Gary?
Thank you.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. The first item we have is the Claire Commissioner training that we just had, which was great. So we're going to move on to our welcome and introductions. Do we have any new members that have just joined us with this being their first meeting? If you do, could you raise your hand?
Seems like no one
See if
yet.
I-
Mhm.
No one yet?
I think
Okay. Well, let's-
yeah, we have a couple of new people in, but I don't believe they're serving as RPC members. I think they're just observing. Mhm. So
Sounds
with
great.
that,
Well, welcome. Okay, moving on to item 3, we have the adoption of the minutes from 6/15/2023.
apologies, that's a
someone like-
mistake. This is from September, the September.
can't- What's the date on that? I can't see. It's a small 15th.
That is 9-21 -23, and I'll make that edit if obviously on the top of there.
Okay. Someone like to make a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved, Bizzano.
There's a second.
Second, Bonnie.
John Petronola.
Thank you.
Any corrections or comments on the minutes before we make a motion before we approve them? No. Okay, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
All right. And give me a second, I'm just jotting down the edits I have to make to that. Change dates. Minutes. All right, so zoning referrals. I sent out a package yesterday, I believe, with all of this good stuff in it. For the most part, it's all standard, no comments or no regional impact. We did have one that I was showing CROG support for, which is a zoning referral from Bloomfield that has some supportive language being added for, I believe, pedestrian facilities. but also prohibiting car washes and gas stations in central commercial districts, which I thought, you know what, that's not too bad. But besides that, everything else is relatively more of the we have a stormwater management regulations being added, which seemed really good. And then everything else was more group daycare facilities and bringing things up to state statutes.
Does anyone have any comments or questions? If not, would someone like to make a motion to approve the report as presented?
I'll make a motion to approve it, Bazzano.
So here's a second.
I'll second. It's Mike Stevie in Manchester.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
All right. Now we have the
So we have
discussion on the next meeting dates.
March 21st, June 18th, September 19th, and November 21st.
So if I may, I changed the June meeting to Tuesday, and that was for no reason besides the fact that I know when we were setting dates the last time around, there was interest in not all the meetings being on a Thursday. But we can obviously discuss that, and if most people here aren't around on Tuesdays or want it on a specific day of the week, or know of other people who would like to come on a different day, just give us a heads up, and obviously y'all can vote on it.
This is Bonnie from Manchester. The year needs to be changed in some of the dates. Because it's the upcoming calendar.
Yes. Thank you.
Before we publish.
Absolutely. I got to it on that first one and just didn't continue, I guess, huh?
Yeah.
Change dates.
Is there anyone that's unable to do the Tuesday?
Or would like to see it on a different day, or any of the other ones on different days as well?
Which Tuesday of the month would it be?
I believe that is the third Tuesday of the month. Let me just check for you real quick, just to double check.
Yeah, that's the same
Yep.
day as our meeting, but don't change it for me.
All right, but if you want it, no worries. Or if other people are running into similar issues, it's okay too.
Anyone else have any comments or feedback on the dates? If not, would someone like to make a motion to approve the dates for our 2024 meeting schedule?
With the edits, of course.
So moved, Mary. Do I hear a second?
Second, Bazzano.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
All right. And next, we have the Regional Planning, Conservation and Development update. And for that, I'm going to pass it off to my colleague Kyle. And before I do that, though, I do want to mention that we're having a photo competition or contest. So if you have any good pictures of your towns, or if you know anyone who has any really good pictures of your towns, I'll share the link in the chat, and feel free to submit those images so that we might be able to use them in our plan. That'd be pretty cool. And obviously there are prizes if you win.
And I will say, I'm very impressed with the scanning technology automatically in the camera, because it picks up on that little QR code on my screen, at least, that Jacob has up. So definitely, we'd appreciate, feel free to submit and please share. We'd love that.
All right. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing and pass it off to you, Kyle.
All right. Hi, everyone. Good evening. So I have a quick update on the POCD, and Jacob, can I share? I can share, right? I have some slides. Here we go.
You can, you're good.
All right, here we go. So I'm gonna do a very abbreviated update, and if I happen to gloss over something you're interested in, just let me know and we can kind of answer your questions. But we last Caitlin, did we give an update in September or no?
Not in September. I think maybe high level let you know it was coming. At some point you've been before this group, Kyle. But we thought it was important to get this in front of you because there's no, I don't think, other official meeting, at least on the calendar, for you all to see this before we're sort of off to the races and doing public notices. So there will be public meetings coming up, and Kyle, you're probably about to say this, but there will be public meetings coming up when we, have drafts, and we will be inviting you all to that, but there's no formal POCD update planned for you guys since you all don't meet until March.
Yeah, and I think the last update I did for you guys was probably March of last year. So we've been quite active since then. So I'll just do a high level overview. And again, ask me any questions if I kind of gloss over anything. But so we're calling this Connect Capital Region, and the big time commitment for over the past several months was public engagement. Jacob was really leading the charge on that, along with our colleague Maureen. So we had a couple different major tasks for engagement. We did an online survey, which some of you may have taken. We did a lot of in-person events where they did a SWOTs, weaknesses, opportunity, and threats analysis via a sticky note commenting. We did an event called Table Talk, which I can summarize, and Jacob was actually again leading the charge on that. He can fill in details if I skip over it a bit. And we did a lot of technical focus groups, kind of in-depth meetings with subject matter experts. So in terms of our online survey, we posted it on the CROG website, pushed out to planning directors and probably some of you at some point. And this is kind of the distribution of respondents throughout our region. So great responses in some communities, less so in others. But in total, we had 338 responses, which is a lot more than we expected, actually. And they were open-ended questions in some instances. But and again, we can provide you the complete survey if you're interested. I'll do a quick run through. We obviously got the stuff like race, ethnicity, age range, demographics, that sort of information. We did find our survey response were probably a little whiter than the average in the region. So there's some slight underrepresentation of Black and Asian residents. In terms of household composition, I'd say just the bottom right one sticks out. It's probably the median income was a little higher again in the region than among the responses. So that was something we'll try and correct in any other components of our public engagement. But we asked questions like, if you had infrastructure, would you be more likely to use other things other than a car? And this is an interesting one. People are interested in using biking or walking as compared to a single-use occupancy automobile. Stuff like that was asked. We had kind of high level stuff with where would you want to live in the next 10 years? And the plurality was suburbs close to urban amenities. We asked questions like where can improvements be made to the region? So we had a lot of responses for environmental, sustainability, more activity and vibrancy. So we can provide these. Jacob, can you correct me? Do we have the responses all analyzed and available via spreadsheet or charts and whatnot?
Yeah, we have all the data with our analyzed little table things, if that's what you're looking for.
Yeah, there's probably like 30 questions. So if you're interested in the details, they'll be in the draft plan. But if you're interested in taking a look in the meantime, we can certainly send those to you. Then the other thing we did was a major time commitment was in-person engagement. We did 12 events across 7 communities throughout the region. As far as Canton, Hebron, Mansfield, West Hartford, Wethersfield, we did several in Hartford and a few in New Britain. We estimate we probably talked to over about 1,000 people at these events. Jacob and Maureen especially did a lot of work on this. And the basic framework was we gave people sticky notes and we kind of asked them to write general purpose questions or comments on certain topics. And we probably got, I don't know how many, Jacob would say, a couple hundred sticky notes of varying comments and topics.
Yeah, I would say close to 1,000 even, because there's over 500 just alone for opportunities.
Yeah. So what Jacob and our colleagues did is they kind of classified them by category, that far left column, and by the event. And I think they're gonna kind of pull together some sort of graph based on SWOTs, opportunities, weaknesses, and strengths. And again, that will make it into the final plan with a little more summary of the specific responses that we got from people. But it was an interesting exercise. It was good to get out in the community, and Jacob and Maureen especially had a lot of great conversations. And then again, to fill in the gaps, like I said, the demographics were probably a little whiter, a little higher income than the regional average. So to kind of fill in those gaps, we were targeting community hosts through something we call Table Talk, which is where you are able to host an event in your house of people, whoever you want to speak with, your colleagues, neighbors, friends. You can pick topics as long as they relate to the POC. You can pick whatever topics you want: equity, transportation, housing, the environment, your choice. It's in the comfort of your home or wherever you want to do it. There is some compensation for hosts who are willing to have these events. And all we ask in return is we want relatively detailed summary minutes of those events so we can kind of feed it into the POC for the public engagement portion. And I believe that is still ongoing, if I'm not mistaken, Jacob. Is that correct?
Correct. I mean, registration is closed at this point. I think we had 10 hosts registered, each with like up to 10 people that they're communicating with, except for one had a more tabling style event. But for the most part, now we're reviewing the submitted reports, and we're waiting on about 3 other reports that have yet to come in. But we're patient and we're reviewing, so they can take their time.
Yeah.
Bonnie, did you have a question? I saw you had your hand up, but I don't know if we answered, if it was about opportunities for table talk or still. Go ahead, Bonnie.
Yeah, that was opportunities for table talk, because we have, at least in Manchester, we have some buildings that we could, events coming up, and maybe have some sort of a kiosk to, engage the community, especially, we have a really diverse ethnic community in Manchester. So, it's disappointing that, I'm not disappointing, but if it would be, but if you've closed that, then,
Hey, if we still have a little bit of funding for it. So, I mean, if you really have a good idea and you want to do it, or if you know someone who wants to do it, reach out to me, and we can coordinate getting you the materials and the compensation.
yeah, I'll talk to them, because I'm thinking of the disabled community here in Manchester. They don't have an opportunity. And they're not, I saw the events you were at. I doubt they were at any of those events. So I'm thinking, people with disabilities would be a great idea to get them, and get their viewpoint. Because the income bracket also.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, it's a great idea, Bonnie. Yeah.
Love that.
Reach out to me, send me an email, and we'll work on it. Cool.
Thank you.
Great. Yeah,
Thank
thanks,
you.
Bonnie. Appreciate it. Yeah, and these are some of the hosts that Jacob was able to recruit. So a wide range of folks with life experiences and different perspectives from the region. So we anticipate some really interesting conversations are going to happen. And again, that'll make its way into the final plan. You'll be able to read the draft version when it's ready. And we also did focus groups. So this is where we invited subject matter experts. So we had one in June. You can see the bottom row there with folks from DEEP, CRCA, conservation districts, environmental planners from across the state, the city of Hartford. And we had one on housing. You can see at the top there. We had Mayor Bronin moderate one panel. We had a separate public sector panel. So we had developers. The new mayor of Hartford was actually there talking about his work at the Hartford Land Bank. So then we also had a separate one on governance in July that was attended by mostly town managers. We talked about fiscal issues, property taxes, municipal government operations. So 3 really in-depth conversations of a technical nature. And again, that's got to kind of make its way into the policy recommendations for the POCD. And some of the initial conclusions, we're still going through the data and got to write the summary probably over the next 2 months. But the community stood out as an important thing. The importance of community, especially after the pandemic. people who are interested in governance, not necessarily just planning and zoning, but like taxes and how you pay for things and basically how you pay for public services and how are you doing it equitably and are you engaging the community to the full extent that you can. In terms of specific topics, obviously the two that were top of mind are housing, given the housing costs lately, and transportation. There's a lot of more interest in public transit, biking and walking, you know, basically other than you want more options than having a car. So that's something that emerged to the top during our engagement efforts. And also we mentioned this last time, I probably mentioned it in March of last year. We were looking for advisory committee of town planners. We have gotten many since, so the highlighted towns that you see here are represented on our advisory committee. We've met with them twice so far. We've met with them in May, and then we had a follow-up meeting with them in October. So it's a pretty good representation from the urban communities all the way to the rural planners. So it's a good perspective, and they're helping kind of help hone in our policies and making sure we're not overlooking perspectives from different towns. So it's been a helpful process so far. And again, they've also helped us with the municipal focus areas. I think we have about 20 out of the 38 towns have responded with their own specific narratives where the towns actually write their portions of the plan. They write what they're focused on, what their commissions are focused on, and what they care about. So we have 20 out of 38. We have a few more to go, but that's an important piece of the plan, and it's been going pretty well so far. This is a very rough project timeline. So we did the engagement, which I told you about. November to December, we're going to be doing more data analysis and writing the plan. We'll have another advisory committee meeting with the planners, and probably December. We'll probably do the graphic design work and a draft version of the plan, January, February. And like Caitlin said, we have a scheduled RPC meeting in March, but we may have an opportunity to present. We would like to present you guys something before March if we can, and we're gonna make every effort to do so. And then the final version, or the final really task for the POCD, is to have the CROG policy board adopt it in May of this year. So again, this is a very simplified timeline, but that's kind of the rough estimated project timeline for the POCD. And that's what I have. I'm happy to take any questions if you have any.
Thanks.
Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, this is Tom Manning. Who is on the advisory committee from Bolton?
Patrice Carson, the director of planning.
Thank you.
Yeah.
If you think of anything in the meantime, Kyle is taking point on the POCD, obviously, so you can always email Kyle or really anybody else on the call from CROG, and we will get it to Kyle.
Yep.
Okay, I'll start
Thanks,
sharing
Kyle.
again.
Thank you.
Kyle.
Okay. If you can see that, Jen, we're
Okay.
on what's new in my town.
What's new in my town? I can tell you from Plainville, we've had a ton of interest in exploring PDD options in a couple of different sites in town, looking at whether it'd be more appropriate in some situations for redevelopment where infrastructure just is going to be too costly to replace, to just completely demolish existing buildings that some businesses have moved out of. And to see what's most appropriate in forward thinking for development to potentially create moving forward for creating a cohesive environment that is potentially going to open up some housing stock for us that would offer potentially more affordable housing, but also those entities that could be either combined owned or rented, with also some commercial, and also looking at the linkages with other towns via the transportation system that exists. So we've had a lot of activity coming before us, and hopefully things will calm down a little bit because we have had some significant interest in public hearings with certain developments in town. But I'm interested to hear what's going on in other towns. Anyone have anything to share?
And I actually have a question for you, until somebody else, if you want to jump in, you do not have to by any means, but if you'd like to share. Are those primarily in your central business district? Are you primarily looking at like office space needing to convert into a new use?
Both.
Okay.
Yeah, we've got some businesses over the next year that are going to be leaving. We've got one in particular that is going to be looking to go to Bristol that has several different, one larger location in town, and then further down the road, a couple of smaller locations. So we're going to have a couple of different vacancies, and the larger one, which is was our prior middle school, the infrastructure really is quite outdated. And so the conversion wouldn't work to go to apartments directly from the structure of the building. It'd be too costly. So they're looking at, you know, what would be the best option there if a PDD would work.
Okay. Yeah, there's a office, like a office vacancy, I don't know if listserv is the right word, and they occasionally about almost every week they push out articles that are related to office vacancy and converting and the issues around that. So if there's any specific questions, I could potentially dive through there or give you the information with which I think you can probably join the list if you're interested.
Oh, that is interesting. Yes. Please share it with me.
Sure.
Would anyone like to share what's going on in their town?
Yeah, I'll chime in. This is John Petronella from Enfield, and I believe after the first of the year we will be updating our zoning regulations. So we'll be starting on that, and also I'd like to point out that you know, a couple of years ago we've approved the regulation for cannabis dispensaries in our town, and since then we've approved 2 dispensaries, one about a year ago and one about a couple of months ago, and so since then we've seen a lot of chatter in town, a lot of talk about some criticism that geez, all of a sudden we got all these cannabis dispensaries being approved, and you know, a lot of people pointing out that they're against it and so forth. Geez, Enfield's going to be full of cannabis dispensaries all of a sudden. But you know, we've approved the regulations, we've adopted the regulations, and that's just what happens. And you know, when you're on a commission, you see a lot of criticisms and so forth, but it is what it is. And just pointing out that that's new in our town, I guess. So it is what it is. So, but you know, thanks for listening.
If you or others have any specific questions on sort of, actually, I think there was a question on the list or maybe about this actually recently too, within the last week, sort of about, maybe it was from you, John, about CBD and what communities have experienced. Or if there's other questions, let me know. CROG had at one point been putting together sort of a cannabis, like sort of state of the region situation as far as like, you know, what towns had adopted. At the time, a lot of towns still were in the moratorium phase. So I don't know if there's just, if it's a point in time where the conversations are kind of happening again, like it's sort of a natural time at which towns are revisiting the conversation, or maybe actual dispensaries are now getting approved. But if there are any specific questions that we can assist you with, let us know. And maybe we'll revisit the document that we had put together, but just never quite got across the finish line. And to see if that's of any use to you all. And if there's specific questions we can dive into for you, we can do that.
Yeah, hey, just Mike Stevie, just to follow up on that, just Manchester, we have 2 locations already up and running. And when we had the public hearings for them, everybody was up in arms about like traffic and whatnot. And honestly, the traffic at both locations has been so subdued. I mean, you barely know anybody's working out there. And one's up on the top of Buckland Hills and one is down on the other side of the BJ's for us, if you guys are familiar with Manchester. And there's been zero traffic issues. I mean, the first ones they actually came in and said, well, we'll do a special duty for a traffic officer and whatnot in their opening time. But it was just like, yeah, no, you're out of here. We're not going to need you after today. Is after like the first or second day. So, if people are talking about traffic, I think it's already past that super buzz time, not to use a bad pun, but, traffic is not the thing. And they're so heavily regulated by the state legislature that it's, we got 2 buildings that got redeveloped and refurbished and redone. And it brings tax dollars into the town. So, so far, nothing bad, no downside to what we've seen out of this. So, thanks.
Good to hear.
Thanks for that. Maybe we'll follow up and can add to our document, real case studies in the region now that have actually gone into business and check in with towns.
It's always interesting to hear kind of what the concerns raised in different towns and different areas are. Our concerns we just approved a drive-through recreational facility. And the biggest concern that those that showed up to the public hearing had wasn't related as much to traffic as it was making sure that when people were purchasing, they weren't smoking on site, and how was that going to be monitored, and making sure that they weren't smoking prior to driving, or using prior to driving. That was the bigger concern than traffic for us.
Yeah, similar in Newington, I know there was a decent pushback just for what seemed to be drug stigma in general. So not so much traffic, but more the drug use itself and it being a drug in town kind of deal.
And does anyone know that's been dealing with this more than myself? Does the state prohibit smoking on premises, or is that up to each municipality?
Yes,
okay. Yeah, my
written
take
in
on
the
that would be
legislation.
that no proprietor wants to risk losing their state license after everything they went to get it. But no, understandable concerns from different folks. Anyone else? Sorry.
Has anyone else had any new clothing collection receptacles come into their towns? It's a different company that came into ours that actually has cameras set up to monitor for clothing and other items that don't fit in the bin that are left on the outside, so as to not be an eyesore, so that they could more closely monitor and collect the items so that they're not left outside of the bins. It was just something new that came into town a couple of meetings ago that I thought was like an added benefit from the company itself, because I know a lot of times clothing bins and collection bins can be a problem.
I haven't heard of that, but supposedly we have in the works an application for a mobile clothing collection vehicle that's going to be parking in one of the shopping centers.
That's pretty cool. I have one of those in my neighborhood, which is pretty awesome. And then he resells the stuff in a different, more needy neighborhood, which is, I think, genius. But
Bonnie's has her hand raised.
Yeah, in Manchester, we had a really, shall I say, several meetings, public hearing on a car wash coming into town, in our aquifer protection area. And we acted, as the Aquifer Protection Agency, but I thought there was a couple of things that I thought was interesting and wondered to know any towns who have aquifer protection areas. First of all, the state of Connecticut Deep gave an opinion before the local Aquifer Protection Agency was able to hear the application and vote. And I thought that was rather unusual, or I don't know if it was unusual or not, that they actually had conversations and communications with the applicant prior to us even hearing the application and act in a, before us as the Aquifer Protection Agency. And the opinion that was given by Connecticut Deep is that even though it was a car wash, because it was discharging to sanitary sewer, it would not necessarily qualify under the aquifer protection regulations. And so we had, very exhaustive hearings on it. The car wash, actually, the application did get denied. But for other reasons not related to the aquifer protection. So I was wondering if other towns have experienced having Connecticut Deep weigh in with an opinion, their interpretation and opinion before the local agency even got to hear the application and have discussion. Because I found that. And then the other is there, for the fact that in changing zoning regulations prohibiting certain types of establishments within our zoning regs, within our aquifer protection agencies, has anyone done that within the aquifer protection zone? I don't know if any of the towns here have aquifer protection areas.
This is Tom Manning from Bolton. We do have an aquifer protection overlay zone.
Okay. And have you had much development applications in front of you and you're acting as the local aquifer protection agency?
There was a lot of activity at first, but there's been much less lately.
Mm-hmm. And did you change any of your, shall I say, permitted uses within the aquifer protection areas based on having an aquifer protection areas? Did you, in addition to what the aquifer protection regulations have?
I would have to read the regulations. But I could give you a link to that.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear his response.
I could give you a link to that, to the regulations, and you
Yeah. Did you make any amendments to your regulations that would prohibit certain activities or types of permitted uses in your aquifer protection areas in response to having aquifer protection areas? Did you have that like as an overlay zone, let's say, in your zoning regulations, and then included, permitted or limited permitted uses in those areas, like a floating zone?
I think what we did, is when all this discussion started, we put in an aquifer protection overlay zone immediately.
Okay.
And then when we became the aquifer protection agency,
Mm.
we removed the overlay zone because we were just enforcing the regulations.
Okay. Okay.
You said you'd send the link, Tom?
Yeah.
And what we can do, Jacob, too, is we can maybe take a look at our referral log. We can do a little search for aquifer and see if there's other towns that have been doing anything as of late. They might help, or might not.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
might not. Yeah.
I mean, if like, I might be too new at this, but if people are protecting their commercial zones from specific uses like drive-throughs, and car washes and all that stuff, I don't see why not. If that's something of interest that you feel like would add an extra layer of protection, I
Yeah,
don't see why
that's
you
exactly
shouldn't be
right,
allowed to
Jacob.
explore that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I wanted to know if any other towns have done that,
Yeah.
municipalities.
I can take a look and I'll send you what I find. I haven't seen anything since I've been on, but I'll look in our further back archives.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's,
Take a look at Plainville's regulations, because we haven't acted on anything recently, but in the very beginning, when we did redo some of our regulations for changing what uses could be in our aquifer protection area, and we have had some businesses come before us, and this was, probably maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago. It's been a while since we've had anybody come, but you might want to take a look at our regs.
and who's, I'm sorry, is that,
It's Jen.
that's Jen on the phone? Okay.
Yeah,
Thanks,
from
Jen.
Plainville.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Plainville, yep. Thanks.
And then in regards to your first comment / question, Bonnie, I have seen that happen where the applicant knows that they're going to face challenge locally, so they go to the source directly and able to get a letter of support for whatever they're applying for. And I have seen it come in through deep in terms of comments, letters of support for different projects. Like if someone's taking precautions in a certain way, they'll write up a letter and then they go present it to their local commission saying like, hey, I have this letter of support doing this. But that's if they know that they're going to face some scrutiny on that commission already, for the most part.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised myself. I thought that the state would wait until the local aquifer protection agency took action or heard. Because but I guess it's not uncommon then. So
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's common, but I think it's more like the applicant will fight to get letters of support from whatever avenue they can, and able to make their application look more appealing to the council.
Okay.
So yeah, I guess they don't wait, or at least Deep doesn't.
Bonnie,
Thank you.
it's Jen, when we had previous applications, we never had anybody come before us with anything from Deep. So I'm wondering if it's, the applicant that's kind of fishing or seeking this out, versus if there's been any change at Deep more recently. So I wonder where it's coming from.
Yeah, I think the applicant, but I know what I found interesting, and really a risk actually for the DEP staff member, without seeing a full application in front of them, because they post it just as conversation. I would be reluctant as DEP staff to offer an opinion without seeing full application and plans. And that was not the case. But yet it was submitted into the record as, communication. So
Has your
I don't know.
planner had any dialogue with Deep, just to kind of say, hey,
after the fact?
Yeah, no.
Yeah, I mean, I think they I'm sure town staff did talk to Deep after the fact it was submitted. And it wasn't,
not ideal.
No. but thank you. I just wanted to know others' experience, and I will look at Bolton's and Jen, your town's regulations and see, we may need to make some changes.
Yeah, don't reinvent the wheel. Use what's out there to help guide you.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have anything to share as to what's new in their town? If not, do we have any other agenda items? I know there was a number 7 other business.
One last thing, I'll go ahead and take this, just to let you know, it is that time again, I guess, literally. Wasn't even looking at the slide. It is that time again, where we do appointments to RPC. We were behind the ball actually the last time this happened. We do it every 2 years. And so ideally we reach out at this time to your towns and just ask them to confirm or let us know who any potential new appointments might be to the Regional Planning Commission. So it's likely that we will see many of you again, but the idea is that come the March 2024 first meeting of RPC, that we'll have our potentially, new slate of RPC commissioners. I'm sure it'll be a mix of existing and new. And so we're going to be, again, sending out memos to towns to let them know that they need to be doing that. And we just figured we would give you all a heads up. And if you have any questions about who we're contacting or anything like that, let me know. I think it goes to, I have to check our bylaws and what we've sent in the past. I can't recall if it goes to town clerk or if it goes to planning directors or something like that, or maybe leadership. I will confirm, but we'll be reaching out.
I think it goes, I know for Plainville, it goes to our town manager.
Yeah, that would make the most sense. Great. And if you know that you plan to stay as P&Z commissioner and you would like to keep serving and you know who likely is the contact, feel free to nudge them to make sure that they send us back the appointment information. Because I think we were a little spotty the last time on responses. So.
I'm getting someone from
Good.
everywhere this time around. For sure.
Does anybody else have anything to add for tonight's meeting? If not, I would like to thank everyone for all of their time and to wish everyone a healthy and happy holiday season, because it is that time of year. We won't see everyone again until March. And if perchance you might not be continuing due to whatever circumstances, thank you everyone for all of your time and dedication that you've had this year.
Yes, thank you. And we think the next meeting will be much shorter than the last 2. So
thank you.
Appreciate it.
And would someone like to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved, Bizzano.
Second, Rich Roberts.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you again, everyone.
Thank
care,
you.
everyone.
Again.
Bye-bye.
Take care, y'all.
Thanks.
Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving. Bye-bye.
Thanksgiving.
Bye.
Thank you all. Yep. Bye.